Prior to the release of Britney's sixth studio album titled Circus, Britney was hospitalized in January of 2008. So this era had already started off pretty uncomfortable, to say the least. This album was recorded between March and September 2008 after Britney was involuntarily put under a conservatorship. At this particular point in her career, Britney was led to believe that her conservatorship was temporary, but unfortunately, as we all know, the conservatorship would be made permanent for the next 13 years, and it was made permanent in 2010. Just 13 months after the release of Blackout, Circus was released on the 28th of November 2008. This is insane to me. Like, how can Britney go from public meltdown, hospitalization, put under a conservatorship, custody of her children taken away, all of that mess, and she puts out a record? Most likely it was involuntarily put out, this record, but just 13 months after Blackout, it was as if her team, her label, her management, whoever was in control of Britney's music were really trying to speed up this process, speed up a new era after Blackout. And that was Britney's most creative control that she'd ever had on an album. And it was the most authentic Britney that we had. I just really don't like that it was just 13 months after, considering everything that she'd been through with the media and in her personal life and her struggles. Like, for her to be put into work, shoved into work like this, really makes me feel uneasy. Straying away from the darker themes of Blackout, Circus is a much more lighter themed album, and it's a primarily pop and dance record whose lyrical content focuses on fame, infidelity, infatuation, and much more. Upon its release, Circus debuted atop the Billboard 200, selling 505,000 copies in its first week. Stay tuned for part 2. Circus was met with commercial success and a mixture of reviews, some incredible, some not so incredible, but overall Circus was an insane commercial success. Did I mention Circus was the second biggest debut sales of 2008 for a female artist after Taylor Swift's Fearless? This album became Britney's 5th #1 album, and her lead single, Womanizer, debuted at number 96 on the US Billboard 200, but then in its second week, it literally shot to the top of the charts, and this marked the largest leap on the chart at the time. Womanizer became Britney's best-selling single in the US since her debut in 1998 with Baby One More Time. How insane. Another reminder, Britney was 10 years into her career at this point. 10. And she was also 27. Just sit with that for a second. As you can imagine, Britney had to do an extensive album rollout to promote this album. Her record label had her working overtime, and not in a good way. She did performances, interviews, TV appearances, photo shoots. She was doing it all. Like, she was working her butt off. This was more than we'd seen from Britney since, I would say, before her Blackout era. In her Blackout era, she wasn't doing as much promo as this. This era was a whole new level. I really do feel like for most of the promotion, she was just made to do it. I don't think it was out of her own choice and her own will, which is really unfortunate. And considering everything that she just gone through, not even a year ago, just a few months ago, for her to be exerting herself this much, it just feels a little exploitative to me. I just feel like her record label or the powers that be were using Britney as this money-making machine and just getting her to do what they wanted. Just 2 days after the release of her Circus album, Britney released her personal documentary titled Britney for the Record. If you haven't watched this MTV documentary, I highly recommend you do. You can watch a few clips on YouTube, but I'm sure you can find somewhere on this internet where the full documentary is. I'm going to talk about this documentary a little further in the next video, so stay tuned for part 3. The Britney for the Record documentary follows Britney Spears over a span of 60 days where she discusses her personal struggles in the limelight, and she also addresses some of her past relationships. Just a very intimate, personal documentary. Obviously, it was Britney that was talking in this documentary and telling her journey and her story, but considering this was released while she was under the conservatorship, I'm not sure how much control that she still had over it, overseeing all the footage and stuff. Because in the documentary, Britney does look visibly distressed. It's just heart-wrenching to see her go through all of this stuff and to see her yearn for her freedom back. In the documentary, it does give the vibe that Britney was under the impression that she would be getting her freedom back. She would eventually get out of this prison, of this jail that she was stuck in. If any of you have watched this, I'd love to know what your thoughts are and what you think about this documentary coming out during the time that she was placed under the conservatorship. But it wasn't all doom and gloom in this documentary. I feel like Britney was showcasing that she had a lot to prove and she was willing to put in the work so that people could just gather the fact that she was sane and she was able to have control of her own life. Despite everything that she'd been through, I see a lot of resilience in Britney in general, but in this documentary, I see her resilience shining through, like on another level, because to go through what she went through and to continue to put on a show for people is insanity. Speaking of shows, to further promote her album, Britney embarked on her seventh concert tour titled The Circus, starring Britney Spears. Sorry, but imagine being on your seventh concert tour by the time you're 27. I feel like I have to take a deep breath for Britney. Like, I am exhausted for Britney at this point. The tour was 4 legs and had 97 shows, and it became the 5th highest grossing tour of 2008, grossing over $130 million worldwide. Stay tuned for part 4. In my opinion, the visuals and the aesthetics for the Circus era were absolutely unmatched. A few forums that I read online did not like the album cover for Circus because if you look closely, some of them are saying that Britney's eye looks a little wonky. Personally, I just think that's very, very picky because yes, I know she's super airbrushed and made to look like this super perfect, but I just think it's a pretty cover. Like, obviously it's giving Circus, it's giving Ringmaster. It is cute. I really love how the Circus theme was thoroughly executed. It wasn't just a little bit circusy, like everything was giving Circus, as well as the tour, which we'll get into in a minute. But I really love how it was so cohesive and very, very appealing. Setup for the Circus tour was insane. It looked like a real life circus. I would have thought, like, of course they're gonna try and imitate circus-like themes, circus-like games, circus-like theatrics. Britney Spears brought the circus to every single city she performed in on this tour. It was insane, from the lighting to the acrobats to the choreography to the costumes to the props. Everything was immaculate. It was so extravagant. If any of you went to this tour, please let me know what it was like, what you enjoyed, what was your favorite thing, because I was unfortunately too young to go to this tour. I really wish I did. All of the costumes Britney wore on this tour were designed by the Canadian designers D-Squared, and I've seen their work before. They're really, really talented, but when it comes to the costumes on this tour specifically, I didn't really love it. I won't lie. I feel like they could have done a lot more, especially considering Circus theme is such a theatrical theme. You can literally do all sorts of extravagant things, but like this outfit, a little basic for me, sorry. I really like this one though. I feel like it reminds me of something that she wore on the Onyx tour or the M22's tour. I can't remember what it was called, but like I feel like this is definitely giving me Britney vibes. Stay tuned for part 5. Britney really committed with the Circus theme, and Most of her outfits and her style during this era would coincide with the circus-like theme. Upon my research for this video, I was really surprised to read that a lot of people actually felt like this era was very tacky and lazy and unoriginal due to the circus theme. But I just had to disagree, because I think Britney having a circus theme as her comeback album is genius. Not only is it creative, extravagant, gonna bring in that attention, reel people in to what she's got going on in this era, but it's also very relevant to her life. Considering Britney Spears was quite literally treated like an animal in a circus by the media, this theme was very on brand for her life at that particular point in her career. Throughout all her hardships and struggles that she had to endure publicly, I feel like a circus theme is very, very on the nose and on brand for Britney. Britney was expected to show up and perform no matter the amount of abuse that she had to endure. So yeah, a circus theme is very, very on brand and very, very fitting. Overall, in terms of the music, production, the tour, the aesthetics, the circus era was very well executed in my opinion. I mean, we could have done a little bit better with like the singles in my opinion. We could have changed a few things there, but other than that, this era was well executed. However, it doesn't take a genius to notice that Britney was probably very exhausted during this era, overworked, and probably very uncomfortable for the most part. She didn't have that same spark that we were so accustomed to in her previous eras. Once Circus was concluded, the following eras was Britney the Machine, Britney the Moneymaker, and Britney the Brand. Prior to the release of Britney's 7th studio album, we know that Britney was working on an old school urban R&B sounding album for her 7th studio album. However, that did get scrapped and changed for a more dance pop sound. Majority of the songs on this record were produced by a certain producer that I'm sure we all know. I'll just refer to him as DL, but I'm sure we all know which producer I'm talking about. Most of the songs on this album were produced by DL, and the sound, the creativity aspect, Britney Spears quite literally had no control over that at all. So when revisiting this era or revisiting this sound for Britney, it's a little bittersweet, because as much as Britney sounds amazing on these songs, knowing that she didn't have the control that she wanted is very unfortunate. Still, on the 25th of March, Britney released her 7th studio album titled Femme Fatale. In my eyes, Femme Fatale is the ultimate dance pop album, incorporating sounds of dance pop, electro pop, EDM, synth pop, and many, many more. This album was released at the height of the EDM pop music era that had us all in a chokehold. I don't even care who you are, what type of music that you listen to. In this genre, if you were alive and kicking in 2011, you were bopping your head to this type of music. When I think about my favorite years of music, I always think about 2011, 2012, and 2014. Those 3 years stand out so much to me as some of the best years of pop music. And also it reminds me of my childhood, so I'm always nostalgic about that. But it just reminds me of better days, honestly, and where music was just fun, you know, where music didn't have to have all these crazy meanings, or it was about this person, or it's dedicated to this person, whatnot. It was just fun club music that I couldn't attend at the club because I was too young, but still, it was club music that I lived for. Although Britney intended on having a more R&B focused album, she fit so well with the EDM pop sound that I just think this was the perfect album for Britney to release during this era. Stay tuned for part 2. If you love pop music, Britney's 2011 Femme Fatale album is the perfect album for you. If you love dance pop music, fun music where you can play in the gym, in the car, on the way to work, like quite literally anywhere, on the way to the club, this album is for you. And I just wish that low-key I was 18 in this era so that I listened to it whilst getting ready to go to the club, because I just know I would have the best time. Like, Prees with Femme Fatale playing. Like, I do it now, but it's just not gonna hit the same because it's 2024. And are we really clubbing in 2024? The girls are not clubbing anymore. So yeah. The sounds on this album are insanely catchy and just iconic, you know? Like, you listen to this album and it takes you back, which brings me on to a point that a lot of people have mentioned when discussing this album. A lot of people say that it's quite dated, it doesn't age well, and whilst I agree, when you listen to this album, it kind of does take you back to the 2011 EDM era. However, for me, because that was such a great time in pop music, I love it. Like, I love that I can listen back to this music and remember what 12-year-old me was enjoying. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're anything like me and you love nostalgia, then you will not care that this music kind of takes you back to that place. I literally have a playlist in my Spotify called For the 2K10 Party Girls because I love that era of music so much. Like, think Kesha, think Lady Gaga, think Rihanna, like anyone. This music is just so good. So good. So yeah, whilst I agree, it's not something that I find much of a criticism. It's not really a criticism in my eyes. It's more of a, I don't know, like, I don't know. Some music is supposed to take you back to certain places. Some music is supposed to last forever and age well in the next 20 years, and some music isn't, and that's just how it is. When planning this era, I kind of felt like this guilt. I'm not sure if other Britney fans feel like this when they are discussing certain albums of Britney's, especially albums that came after the conservatorship was set in place. It's hard to enjoy Britney's music whilst knowing that she was going through an incredibly tough time during this era. And I'm not just assuming Britney was upset during this era. There's clear videos of Britney in interviews and performances where she just doesn't look that comfortable, probably due to the medication that she was on or forced to take. But that's another story. Stay tuned for part 3. It comes to no surprise that Femme Fatale debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 276,000 copies in its first week. This record made it her 6th debut at the top, and it also marked Britney being in a 4-way tie as the 3rd most number 1 albums for a female artist, alongside Mariah Carey, Janet Jackson, and Beyonce. Absolutely just blows my mind at how Britney was so far in her career at that point and she was still breaking records and just killing it despite all the horrible things that were going on behind the scenes. The popularity does not die. If Britney decided she wanted to do a random world tour today without no promo, I guarantee that tour would sell out in minutes. Despite having fairly good reviews from music critics, Femme Fatale was not nominated for the 54th Grammys. Femme Fatale did not get a nomination whatsoever. Now, I don't know if I should feel salty about this one. I'm not sure if Femme Fatale was an album that I consider Grammy worthy. However, you guys may feel different, so let me know what you think. However, she did take home the Billboard Favorite Number 1 Album Award at the 2011 Billboard Music Awards. The same night she performed with Miss Rihanna for the S&M remix, and this performance is quite literally chef's kiss. This performance is the epitome of 2011 pop music. I just think 2011, the music was just something. The award shows were incredible, and this collab was just so needed. And apparently, I'm not sure if this is true, but the S&M remix was actually Britney's first collaboration or Britney's first remix, and I had no idea that that was it. But how iconic for even Rihanna to have such a legend on her album so early on in her career as well. Like, we all know the Loud era was iconic, but adding Britney Spears to that made it even more iconic. Stay tuned for part 4. In 2011, Britney was awarded the MTV Michael Jackson Video Vanguard Award, which is so well deserved, and it just proves that in this era, Britney was performing so well. Like, she was incredible. She was doing all sorts of things in her rollout. The commercial success of Femme Fatale was insane, and it just proved that Britney was still as popular as she was in her debut era, all the way up until Femme Fatale. Going back to the previous video, but just another shot of Britney's performance with Rihanna, and just look how happy she looked on stage. Like, I know she was probably still heavily medicated during this era, but when you watch this performance online, Britney looked like she was having fun with Rihanna, and it looked like such a great performance, and I loved it. It's literally so 2011 coded. I live for it. And S&M with Britney Spears, whoever decided that that collab needed to happen was a genius, because it fits so well with both of their brands. At the time, they were both, well, Rihanna was a little bit more controversial, but obviously we know Britney's history and she was a bit more controversial too, so them two coming together was a great collab. I mean, Britney and Rihanna's remix of S&M went straight to #1 and was charting for 26 weeks. That was like almost unheard of for remixes back then. Well, they were popular, a lot of people did remixes, but I feel like now we would never get a remix that would be charting for that long unless it was an insane female pop collab that we had been dying for like ever. Now, as you can imagine, the album rollout for Femme Fatale was pretty traditional and pretty chaotic. Britney was doing everything. Had just released her documentary on April 3rd, which was just less than a month after the release of Femme Fatale. She was doing interviews, she was doing performances at award shows, appearances, everything, you name it, and she looked visibly uncomfortable in most of the appearances she had during this era, which makes me go back to that feeling of guilt when I listened to her album and her music during this time, because I feel like she was suffering a lot personally in her own life, and then she was kind of entertaining us still. And I think it's just a double-edged sword of how do you feel and what do you do as a fan during this era, you know, like how do you separate the two basically. To further promote this album, Britney embarked on her 8th concert tour, and the show is inspired by iconic femme fatales through the ages, and it has about 5 acts. I can't remember exactly what act was called what, however it had a lot of different costumes and a lot of different visuals going on during this show. Personally, it's not my favorite, especially the costumes. I don't know if you guys love them, but these costumes were not that great for me personally. It's definitely 2011 vibes, but they just weren't that cute in my opinion. However, we're still going to go through them. So this was the kind of costume that Britney was consistently wearing throughout the tour, throughout the concert. She would wear like different variations of bodysuits or corsets or whatever you want to call them, and the materials were just not giving to me. I don't know if you guys agree, but for me, I just did not like them. Pink and black were very, very trendy during this era. Like 2011 fashion loved like zebra print, lace, like pink, bright colors. But I just think it looked very tacky. Like, not that Britney looked tacky, but the costume itself was just not giving, in my opinion. Like, I just don't like it. Like, I think with the budget that they would have had for Britney, I'm sure Britney didn't even have control over what she wore, but with the budget that they would have had, it felt like a bit cheap and a bit rushed. I don't know. Just my opinion, guys. Don't come for me. Here's another look that she wore on the tour. This one's slightly better because it feels a little bit more pop star-ish, if that makes sense. Even this one, this is like the very first costume she wears at the tour, and I don't know. I just don't like it. It's Britney Spears. Like, why is she dressed in that? You know, like the leotards and bodysuits, they just look cheap, especially when you compare it to Britney's previous tours where she looked chef's kiss, apart from like some of the shows during Blackout, but I kind of low-key liked those outfits for some reason. But her previous tours, Britney's outfits, even though they were a little more casual, they looked a lot better. Overall, Britney's style in this era just screams 2010s club culture. Like the mini dresses, the bandage dresses, the chunky heels, like all of that. The colour, the boldness is giving 2011 to a T. I'd love to know what your favourite songs from this album are and why you love this album, or why you like this era, or if you don't like this era, let me know.